Perkins and Richard Crowell.
It's very kind of you, Mel. Appreciate that. Looking forward to race 2 of Porsche Carrera Cup Australia. We saw a ripper race yesterday, JP. Plenty of action through it. And it's always great to see a first-time winner too. And Nick McBride, very deserving of that tag.
Yeah, mate, it was an impressive drive too. First pole position, first race win. He did not put a foot wrong in that Bob Jane teammates Porsche. Thoroughly deserved the win. And his teammate, Nick Foster, was running second. They were looking good for a 1-2 for that team. And unfortunately, had a radiator issue and had to come out of the race. So watch him coming from the rear there in 22nd.
Yeah, he was devastated, but he and Nick are great mates, and he was very, very pleased that his teammate was able to break through and grab a victory. If you're new to Porsche Carrera Cup, it's Australia's top one-make championship, and it's a part of a global Porsche formula. And you might hear the odd reference to Porsche around the weekend with Mark Webber as part of our team. This weekend, of course, he's racing factory Porsches in the World Endurance Championship and, of course, the famous Le Mans 24-hour. But Carrera Cup, it's a global formula, 8 different Carrera Cup championships around the world. The Porsche Super Cup running alongside Formula 1 in Europe, and Australia's own Sam Power and Spike Goddard, who's in this field this weekend, will be competing there this year. So this is a very, very important part of the motor racing landscape. It's also fiercely competitive this season.
It is, I mean, and that's the best thing about it. The cars are built in the same factory. They're absolutely identical. And yeah, it's a great part of Australian motorsport. A lot of V8 supercar drivers came through here. David Reynolds, James Moffat, lots of guys there. And a lot of these people will be in the Enduro. Steve Richards there, the reigning champion. He's pairing up with Craig Lowndes later in the year. Chatting
to a couple of fans last night, they've also noticed that these are the loudest cars here on track racing this weekend. The Flat 6 Porsche sound is pretty epic. We're ready for race 2. It's 10 laps at Albert Park. Stephen Richards in the blue and white car on left of screen. Alongside him, Nick McBride, who smokes the rear Michelins. Great start from McConville on the second row and goes down the inside on the run to turn 1. Behind them is Matt Campbell, the young Queenslander, and McConville just edges McBride, the race 1 winner, out. He's third into turn 1. But Stephen Richards, the defending champion, who won all 3 races in the opening round in Adelaide, leads them up to turn 3.
There's no worse feeling starting on pole position, the lights are on, your heart's racing, and you just get a bit of wheel spin and you lose the run, you know, from pole position back to third. Shame for Nico. This is where the concertina happens normally down here to turn 3. Looks like everyone's got through there pretty good.
There'll be a couple of drivers coming from a little bit further down the field. One of them, Simon Hodge, young Adelaide driver, starts from the very back of the field after being caught up in what was quite a large turn 1 accident mid-race. Saw 5 or 6 cars off there. There's 2 classes in Carrera Cup as well. You can tell them apart by the colour of the numbers on the windscreen and the side windows. Yellow numbers are the semi-professional class, the Tag Heuer Carrera Challenge, the race within a race in Carrera Cup. And you just saw Nick Foster there in the 777 car. He's already passed 6 cars, and it could be more as they go into the back chicane.
So Cameron McConville's moved into second. He was one of the fastest guys in the race yesterday, and he worked his way up to third. Now into second. It's going to be a good battle between Richo and Cam. We see that David Russell fighting it out.
Hasn't been a great start for Matt Campbell, the young Queenslander. Started on the front row for the first time in his Carrera Cup career, but he's been shuffled back. He's dicing with Devash and Padiachi there out of the 11 and 12 chicane, and had a big sideways moment too.
It's an angry little pack here. I mean, it's the same yesterday, sort of from about 3rd back to 10th. They're all jostling for position. Richard Muscat locks the rears on the inside of Padiachi, gets the job done.
And Craig Baird with a very good run on Shea Davies into turn 14 and gets through. The 5-time champion goes to 4th. Good pass. Just a great run. I think Davies a little bit slow out of 13. Maybe a bit of a moment on corner exit, and Baird was there to capitalise, as he always is in this category. He's just the most successful driver in one-make Porsche racing going around, and his record stretches to 21 round victories and 60 race wins in Carrera Cup Australia.
It's that kind of racetrack you touched on. I mean, it's a corner leads to a corner, and as silly as that sounds, but it flows together. So those 3 corners you see in sequence, you need to get the first one, the second one, and the third one right, or else the massive lap loss is a loss of position. And I think that's what happened with Beardo. Got a good run on Shea Davies, and Beardo doing a great job. Moved up to 4th. We're often seeing Beardo up the front. You know, we're so used to it, but last year particularly he didn't have a great season in this new model car. And then this year, you know, he started off a little better, but it's not what we expect from Beardo, is it?
I think it shows how strong the level is. Now, let's have a look at this start. In particular, watch the pulse of the bright yellow car and the telltale signs of wheel spin. and that's not key to a great start.
He had a great reaction there, Nick. It just looks like either he didn't get the clutch release that he wanted, and it just bagged up the rear tyres. And Richo, I mean, great start from the inside, and McConville moved up into second as well.
These cars, the drivers tell me, are quite difficult to get off the line because rearward weight bias, of course, the engine between the rear wheels hanging out over the rear axle. Now, this is Nick Foster. Watch the 777 car down the inside of Shane Smollen. Oh, and Scott Taylor, too, has a big spin all on his own into turn 15.
Yeah, that's an interesting one from Taylor. It looked like he might have either locked the rears or just grabbed a little bit of dirt as he's jumped on the brake pedal, which we've seen a couple of the Formula 1 boys do yesterday in practice. Easy to do, and it rotated the car. Dan
Ricciardo spun there. I think if Scott goes back to his family at the end of the weekend and said, oh, I spun, same corner Dan Ricciardo did, it's okay. It's not bad.
You get away with it, you reckon? There's his teammate there, Shea Davies, just in front of Dave Russell. Both these boys will be looking to improve. Dave Russell came into the championship late last year, and man, did he enter with a bang. He won a couple of races and had a lot of aggressive driving, which had a few people talking. But this year in that Finance Easy car, looking to really put together a solid championship this year.
Yeah, last race full-time in Carrera Cup in the late 2000s, so he's spent a couple of seasons. This is his 31st round start in the championship, so plenty of experience. Of course, regular in the V8 season of endurance. Running with Rick Kelly at Jack Daniels Racing Nissan to some success.
So there's also a lot of tyre strategy that plays out over the weekend in Porsche, because there's 2 sets of tyres for the weekend. And just looking at the lap times, Craig Baird has set the fastest lap of the race, some 6/10 faster than what Richo's done. So whether Bairdo's opted to go for a completely new set of tyres here, and maybe Richo and some of the other guys have only ran 2, be interesting to see how this plays out, because Bairdo looks like he's got a good head of steam.
So Richards leads by exactly 1 second over Cam McConville. Experience at the front of the field. Not so much in Carrera Cup for Cam McConville, but just in general motor racing life experience, I think, between the two of them. Especially McConkie this weekend. He's the busiest man in the paddock. 2-seater Formula 1 racing, Speed Comparo. Spent some time down at the F4 pits as well with Cam's, where he works full-time. And that is Spike Goddard. Just running off the road down at Turn 1. Did a test with Force India at the end of last season at Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see another Australian testing Formula 1 cars, and to be involved with Force India there at Abu Dhabi last year at the test, they would have been a cool experience. And this year, starting off in the Carrera Cup with a view to racing Super Cup over in Europe, which would be fantastic for young Spike.
Battle for third. The fastest man on the circuit is Craig Baird. He's in that bright gold Arthur Apartments sponsored 991 GT3 Cup car. He's pulled half a second out of Nick McBride last time round. McBride, easy for some to say, just pulling the margin back to McConville as well. So the battle for second, third and fourth closing in behind them. There's a proper little war, and here's a change of position. Richard Muscat gets another one, and that's a pass on Matt Campbell and moves him up to 7th place. So
Matty just missed the apex there at turn 13, ran a little wide, and like we said, lost momentum. Richard Muscat was able to get the job done, and he's got track position.
All clean and all good for the 24 car field so far. Everyone repaired and okay after no damage in yesterday's race. Richo across the line, 59.4 is the fastest lap of the race. McConville drops 4/10 that lap.
He doesn't have the pace, does he? I mean, doesn't look like he's got the pace of yesterday. He was the fastest guy in the race yesterday, over an average sense. And Richo's just, pulled another 6/10 of a second there, and it'll be interesting to see what happens between Nick McBride, who's chasing, and also Craig Baird, who looks like he's got the eyes on.
It's interesting to see some of the talent in the Carrera Cup. Paddock Campbell Little, I know, is involved down there with the Scotty Taylor boys, but Eric Pender, who you would know from your time in V8 Supercars full-time, but he's doing the engineering down there at the Toshiba Copy World Racing team with Cam McConville and Michael Armand. So Porsche Carrera Cup well underway at Albert Park. We're midway through race 2. We'll jump away for a quick commercial break and come back with a conclusion right after this. The 250th Porsche Carrera Cup Australia race, and you're watching a fantastic battle for 4th through to 9th position. Race 2 of round 2 of Carrera Cup here as part of our ongoing coverage of the Formula 1 Australian Grand Prix at Albert Park from Melbourne. A little bit overcast now as we continue our countdown to qualifying. Warm, gusty day here. The conditions will change. And our countdown to qualifying a little bit later on this afternoon. We'll see what the weather does. It's Melbourne, so if you don't like it, wait for 5 minutes. But lap 6 of 10, halfway through this race, and Stephen Richards, defending champion, leads the way. But Jack Perkins, this is a great battle pack. We're watching David Russell, Richard Muscat and Matty Campbell dice
for what is 6th, 7th and 8th position. Yeah, it's a great battle. I mean, Matty Campbell at the back of that pack there, he's the one that's really, I'm really interested in. You know, he's a young guy. He did a great job in qualifying. He's getting shuffled back, but this is where the experience, you know, he needs to learn, because there's one thing, we know he's going to win races eventually. No one's expecting him to win this weekend, but it's these drives here where you just capitalise on what you're doing, learn from the people in front, don't crash, keep the car straight, because, tell you what, you know, finish inside the top 10 is still a great effort, and his time will come. Let's talk about Stephen Richards, who's leading this race, because his season last year was remarkable in that he only won the one round to win his championship, but that was much like his V8 career, wasn't it? Consistency accumulated over the rounds, and by the final one on the Gold Coast, boom, he was there. Yeah, I mean, that's what Richo has drawn on all his experience over the years, and he knows, I mean, to win a championship, it's about accumulating the most amount of points, as we see. Whoa, that's a big moment for Dave Russell. So Shea Davies got out wide on the AstroTurf, and then David Russell had to check up and had a big moment through there. Oh no, Simon Hodge in the wall there somewhere. So that's on the run into the right hand around the back of the circuit, turn 7 to 9. So what's he done? Down the inside of James. Oh no, on the inside of James Bergmuller in the Porsche Brighton entry. Fortunately, not massive contact with that unprotected concrete barrier on the outside. It's almost as if he just pulled in a little bit too early. Yeah, I mean, Simon was coming through the field, potentially a bit quicker than a lot of those guys, and just didn't give him enough room as he went back to take the racing line. But we see there Richo leading. Like I was saying, he did the very little he needed to do to win the championship, which is accumulate those points. He knows you don't have to win every race. I mean, it helps to win every race. That goes without saying. But yeah, accumulate the most points, and he's got that number one there. First father-son to win the Australian Carrera Cup Championship. What was impressive was the way he performed at the Clipsal 500 and won all 3 races there, qualified on the front row too. He's Craig Baird. We should mention that Max Twigg, who's a 3-time champion of the Tag Heuer Carrera Challenge, continues to lead that class. He's in 12th overall, the Victorian. Behind him in the class is Stephen Grove, the defending class champion in the Grove higher entry. He's in car 4, currently 14th, and Shane Smollen, the Sydney sider, currently sits 15th outright and 3rd in the Carrera Challenge class. So that race within a race, a vital link in Carrera Cup racing, very important. The semi-pro drivers have a place to race, but often the focus is at the pointy end, and justifiably so, because this year it is very competitive. 13 cars covered by 1 second exactly in qualifying on Thursday. We should mention Nick Foster from the back of the field up to 10th, so making a very good fist of charging his way through this field. And he's getting used to that. I mean, he's had a rotten run of luck. I mean, the start of the year, qualified on pole for the first race at Clipsal, and then broke a drive shaft on the grid. Had to come from rear field, and we were watching it together, Richard, and he put together a great drive there, got up to 4th or 5th, and unfortunately, turn 8, one of the most notorious corners in Australian motorsport at Adelaide there, caught him and rode off the car, and he's in another chassis this weekend. And again, yesterday he was running 2nd, and to have an issue with the radiator was just devastating for him, but showing that he's got tremendous car speed by working his way up to 10th. And, you know, in only a 10-lap race, that's more than 1 car a lap, so good job for Nick. Here's David Russell and Matt Campbell. It was almost at that moment with Shea Davies before, caught David Russell out more because he ended up getting past. It was a little bit strange, actually, the way that all worked. Richard Muscat now between them in a very strong 6th place, the reigning Aussie GT champ. You can see Nick Foster just back of shot, cruising up behind Michael Armand, who's involved in this good scrap too. In front of them, Muscat, Davies, Baird 4th, applying the pressure to Nick McBride, who won the race yesterday. Cam McConville 2nd, and Stephen Richards leads the way. This is where there could be a bit of tyre strategy. I mean, David Russell's about a second a lap slower there than the cars and what he was running earlier. And we see Matty Campbell's done a great job up the inside turn 3. That's a textbook move, although Dave's willing to argue about it. He's got the nose there, and looks like Matty's got the job done, and that's allowed Michael Armand to catch up to the back of both of them, and it's a 3-way fight through here. Yeah, Micah's 2nd year Carrera Cup racer, one of many drivers to come out of the GT3 Cup Challenge, which is the second tier of Porsche racing in Australia. Much like the V8's development series, and it's brought Richard Muscat, Fraser Ross in the field this year, a couple of the Carrera Challenge guys as well. It's also a great place for the older Cup cars to race as well. And yeah, if you want to, start somewhere in tin top sedans, it's a great place to start in the GT3 Cup Challenge, and then move your way up into the Carrera Cup. Another reason some of these guys might be struggling for tyre at the moment, Jack, is that the track temperature 40, which is amongst the highest we've seen it for a Carrera Cup race this weekend, and including yesterday's V8 Supercar race. Currently 26 degrees ambient here, but 41 on track now. That's thanks to the Formula One track temperature service. So these are difficult conditions, and
some teams may have elected to go a little bit higher on their tyre pressures earlier and might be paying for that in the second half of this motor race.
No, absolutely right. I mean, that looks like something that could be causing Dave Russell a few moments. We saw him there through that big high-speed 11 and 12 change of direction. He missed the apex and ran wide and lost more ground to Matty Campbell. And what happens is when the tyre pressures are too high and the track temperature's too high, the tyre just doesn't generate the grip. It's operating at too high a temperature. And like you say, they may have pumped the tyres up a bit too much at the start of the race, and some of these other guys have dropped their tyre pressures and they've been able to maintain their performance. But highest track temperatures we've seen all weekend, so that'll no doubt play into the minds of the Formula 1 boys who are about to head out to the track for FP3.
So 2 laps to go. Stephen Richards looking to win his 4th from 5 races in the 2014 Carrera Cup season, but McConville is better in the second half of the race, and the gap that was 1.6 is now down to 0.6, so Cam is coming at him, and it mirrors what we saw yesterday, Jack, where McConville's car was better in the second half, struggled a little bit early, but he's come on as the race has gone on. McBride is still under pressure from Craig Baird, but seems to be holding him off at the moment, and in the bigger picture, with 1 race to go tomorrow, at the moment Richards would win the round, but there's only 4 points between himself and Nick McBride, so not much between them in the overall round battle.
Yeah, I mean, and that McConville pace could be around what we were talking about just before with tyre pressures. I mean, he's just set his fastest lap of the race on lap 8, and by comparison, Steve Richards set his on lap 3, and we see there Richo losing the rear of the car on entry. He's struggling for rear tyre grip. McConville can see that. I mean, Richo's in a tough situation as a driver because you've seen McConville catch him in the mirror. Now he's on you, and you've got to try not to make any mistakes, because the smallest mistake around Albert Park and you'll lose track position.
And a bit of extra motivation on the end to win this, because it is the 250th Carrera Cup race in Australia. The category was formed back in the early 2000s, had a couple of years hiatus, returned in 2011 here at the Australian Grand Prix, and has put on such a great show ever since. Now on the current specification 991 GT3 Cup car. Great to see Mark Webber out there cutting some laps in the 918 earlier on with Eric Banner. I'm surprised he handed the keys over to Eric, but Eric's got a Cup car amongst his garage. He's been racing that car before, so pretty handy racing car driver for an actor.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool to see. I remember when I was racing Formula Ford, Eric Banner was racing in the State Series in Victoria, and to see him out there, I mean, I remember when he was Poiter on Full Frontal, and then now he's a massive actor but loves his motorsport. And yeah, I wouldn't have thought that Mark Webber would ride shotgun to too many people, but the leaders are starting their last lap. Cameron McConville all over the back of Steve Richards, and unlike V8 supercars, this is a points round for Carrera Cup, so these boys, I know the V8 boys are still trying to win, but this is for points and this counts for the whole season.
And the margin 3/10, but let's not worry about what the timing says, because McConville is there right up behind Richo, the leader. So Steve Richards prepares and runs his own race team, Stephen Richards Motorsport. They also prepare the Carrera Challenge entry of James Bergmuller. Had a massive job between Clipsal 2 weeks ago and this round to re-shell that car of Bergmuller's. He had a big crash at turn 8. They had to get a new body shell, put all the running gear in, and they turned it around very, very well. He's a busy boy, but he drives it just as well.
This is a great battle. Richo just missed the apex there. Now Cam's thinking, where can I pass him? And I reckon Richo would be one of the hardest blokes in Australian motorsport to get past. This is an opportunity here, not quite close enough to get the move done.
I wonder where he gets that from, do you think?
I think Jim was one of the hardest guys to get past back in the day. But look, great job here. Cam McConville just getting his familiarity with these cars. Hasn't raced them as often as Richo, and he'll be definitely a championship contender before the year's out.
This great chicane at the back of the circuit. The drivers say the cars are amazing through here if you get it right, because they do point really well. They've got so much grip. These cars do produce a little bit more aero and mechanical grip than the V8 supercars. We'll see a little bit later on this afternoon. So they like them through the high-speed stuff. So we've got a great battle for the lead, then 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th, all running in close company into the final few corners.
A bit surprised by Nick McBride's lack of sort of pace to maintain with the top two. He was our leader yesterday, won the race, did a great job, and today just hasn't had the speed of those front two. McConville ranging in with only a turn to go, but looks like Steve Richards is going to hang on.
It's been a great pressure cooker between the two of them. It only seems appropriate that the 250th Carrera Cup race in Australia goes to the man that won the championship last year. Stephen Richards wins it. It's his 4th win from 5 starts this year. The champion is looking irresistible in 2015. McConville 2nd, McBride 3rd. Those two split by just 12 points in the overall round standings to decide the round 2 winner.
great start to the year for Rich. I mean, he's a reigning champion, and to start the year now, clean sweep at Adelaide, and winning today is a great result and a great start to the season.
Congrats to Max Twig, who wins the Tag Heuer Carrera Challenge and finishes 11th outright. So there are the results from race 2, Porsche Carrera Cup. Gee, it's entertaining. Davies, Muscat, Campbell, David Russell in 8th, Michael Armour 9th, and Nick Foster 10th. Great race. We're looking forward to a big afternoon on track in less than 50 minutes. The Formula 1 cars are out for practice 3. Then there's more V8 supercars and Formula 1 qualifying a little bit later on. It's a big afternoon here on 10. You're home of the Formula 1 Rolex Australian Grand Prix.